Okay, screw it. All my other ideas were bad and stupid. No more combo review videos or only making one substantial review every, like, ninth blue moon when I have something I feel is worth talking about. I'm just gonna do quickie reviews for the stuff I consume like a normal algorithm-chasing YouTuber. Alrighty. I never saw the previous Suicide Squad movie, like a responsible, good boy who takes care of his mental well-being. The TLDR for this is this movie is pretty good, although I was kind of led to believe it would be a little bit different. And I don't have negative feelings towards the experience of watching it, per se, but I did feel a bit disappointed. In my head, I had a vision of a stronger movie. I'll try to avoid spoilers, but I will just talk about what I want to talk about when I want to talk about it, so fair warning. My assumption, hearing things about this new Suicide Squad, was that it would be a bit like Halo Reach, I guess, of all things is what stuck in my mind. In Halo Reach, I barely remember anything about the actual moment-to-moment plot, but the concept and structure alone really appeals to me. Basically, you play through the eyes of super soldiers on a planet just being attacked by the bad guys from the mainline series. Anyways, your team makes a desperate plea to save lives on the planet, evacuate people, do some other important stuff to the plot, and hold off as long as you can until the planet is inevitably overrun, which you already know is the end result before you even start the game, since it's like a prequel and it's very obvious. You play like the first half of the game doing various missions, you employ strategies to fight back, you do the plot thing, getting an idea of all of your teammates, their personalities, their flaws, and bonding with them and stuff, and then around halfway point, your team starts dying off in these missions as they get more and more deadly and more sacrifices need to be made to keep going a little longer and complete the objectives of the missions. Almost every mission near the end, another of your squad mates dies. Your last two squad mates die in the second to last level, and the very last level is like, it's really cool. It's this meaningless, never-ending combat encounter, just you alone on the planet, where enemy waves just get stronger and stronger, and the level only ends when you finally get killed, and that's the end of the story. It's credits after that. Now, I didn't expect everyone in this movie to die. I mean, obviously Harley is untouchable, other characters I figured would make it too, but I don't know. I heard that a lot of named characters die in this movie, so I figured it would be a bit more like, I don't know, like really only a few characters, meaningful characters die. One of the characters that dies near the end is a bad guy. There's one character that dies you don't see that much of in the movie, and then there's only one real death that I'd count as feeling similar to that, like, Halo Reach style of mortality for everyone, Just one death that felt like, actual threat, rather than just, like, the same kinds of deaths you get in literally any other superhero movie, where there's, like, the climax of the story. Think of like Danganronpa, where you start out with 15 or 16 strangers, and by the end you have maybe 5 remaining survivors, these close-knit people who've been through a lot together and know each other very well by that point. The tone fundamentally changes by the end, just from that alone. In this movie, the group gets like trimmed down here and there, around the edges, I guess, but not enough of them die to feel like the structure of the group has changed in a meaningful way. I really feel like Bloodsport and Ratcatcher 2 should have been the only survivors. Hell, they're the only ones in the last scene of the movie anyways. They obviously have the most connection to each other and the story, way more than any other of the group members have to each other. Obviously they can't, nor even should they, kill off Harley, but Harley already presents this weird problem for the story where she doesn't feel like a character in this movie. She feels like this independent character who's just making a long cameo appearance. Because she's never going to be that attached and connected to the other characters and the meaningful, like, bonds or anything they share, because in this group, because by the end, they need her to be this independent character to operate on her own, doesn't have to be tied down to these other characters, so they can keep making, Harley movies and whatever else they have planned for the character in the future. So instead, we have this weird ending where we have the two characters that actually feel like the ending and the entire plot mattered to them, or meant something to them in some way. We have King Shark just bumbling along, I guess, still not relevant to the story at all, and we have Harley, who's just still Harley, It's weird, and I think that it would have been stronger overall if Harley was somehow written out, somehow, And the group could really thin out and change their tone by the end, and for those two guys, to be the only survivors through some sort of genuine struggle, right? Obviously, you can't really judge something negatively based on what you expected or what you think would have been, like, cool to do instead of what they did, but I can't help but feel that the story could have been even more impactful and dramatic if it had more of that sense of, like, pushing up against actual death and sacrifice for more of the movie. I also feel that while we do get, we like all the characters generally by the end, I don't think the movie defines them as well as people had sort of led me to believe. Every character only gets maybe like 2 or 3 scenes or moments of learning much about them or developing them. There's this really cute bar scene with a lot of great little character moments for everyone, especially how they bounce off each other in a more casual setting where it doesn't have to be like this sock puppet monologue about some Cook archetypal backstory or something. So I do think this scene does a fantastic job, especially of fleshing out Peacemaker, since we see him just being like this chill bro. He still feels like his personality, but he's just having a good time with everyone else. It really gives him some believability and some nuance to him, where he's just bonding with the other characters. But I tend to feel this way with a lot of modern movies. It just doesn't feel that significant or developed by the end, really at any part. It's 2 hours long, right? And yet I don't feel like it had the content of something more than, like, say, a well-packed 40-minute episode of a good TV show. This comes down mainly to the feeling of the actual adventure itself. It's hard to feel like you've been through a lot with these characters when you happen to glance at the plot from a bird's eye perspective. What happens in this entire movie exactly? What is this grueling mission that they go through? Well, they get recruited, walk through the jungle a little bit, experience no conflict there, find a camp, murder everyone there effortlessly as a joke, and they weren't even enemies. Then they go to the bar, kidnap the brain guy, that happens effortlessly. There's a boring car chase sequence that's probably the low point of the movie, just in terms of pacing and adding to the narrative, especially since there's no consequence to that sequence at all. They go get Harley, which is just them walking up to the building she's in. Then they go to the final dungeon, and the final act happens. Final sequence is just like they bust down the door, immediately set charges, go downstairs, blow things up. There's no real conflict they face in the building itself. Well, there's like one fight scene, but for the guys in the upstairs, for some reason, they fight over the card, like the information, the MacGuffin. They leave, and then, just like they fight the CGI monster. There's just the rest of the movie, right? Okay, so really only like 1 or 2 events worth mentioning actually happen across the whole story. It's just they show up, go to the bar, kidnap brain guy, go to the final battle happens. That's the whole plot. One bus stop and then the final battle. Like I said, this is an issue I have with a lot of movies these days. But this does not feel like a whole story that spans an entire movie. This feels very short when you look at the overall structure and how much struggle and conflicts actually go into each segment. There's lots of ways to put more content into a movie. Think of how much shit happens in, say, like, the Rick Lantis mix-up in Season 3 of Rick and Morty. There's 4 or 5 complete plot lines that you follow start to finish in that one episode. Each of those 5 plot lines has 3 or 4 meaningful events and developments and stages to them. All of that juicy content is in a single 20-minute episode. It can be done. You just need to mind how much time you waste, how much time you can, how much you can get, multiple things done in a single shot or a single scene, maybe shave a few seconds off of this pause in the dialogue or this lingering shot of a character's face as you fade out in a transition, or trimming shots and cuts all over the place, just making the scenes a little snappier, combining pieces of information, have more characters involved in a single conversation so they can express more meaningful information about themselves or in more subtle ways that saves more time and makes the scenes themselves feel more rich and dense with content rather than just like a single piece of information slowly droned to you through a generic monologue or something. All of these things can be done to save time, so you can actually stuff the content and make things dense, so you can put more content into your story, and by the end make it feel like we've actually been through a real journey, both in terms of the external conflict and with our bond with the characters, you know? So yeah, those are the main things that I think could have been done to really drive home the emotional attachment and bond with the comedy and the tragedy of the story. As of right now, it's pretty good, but it feels much more like just another superhero movie plot than I was led to believe. I was led to believe it was really unique, and I don't think it's that unique. Now, I thought the comedy was pretty decent all the way through. I didn't laugh much, but the tone works. Could be better, but it obviously could have been much worse. I think the best joke is the one near the very beginning with Weasel. Weasel is comedy gold, and after him, the rest of the movie never even remotely approaches giving me the giggles again, you know? And I was watching with a friend, and the same was exactly true for him. I had to keep him from bursting out laughing in the theater for, like, the Weasel jokes and stuff, but not much else. I think I've been a little bit too focused on my, like, post-watch critiques, and I haven't really established my general, like, my resting mindset, but yes, I like this movie. It has cute characters, charming tone, it's a fun watch, it's a good time, has some fairly impactful moments in some places, it has some cases of, like, really cool effects and creative visuals, but those are kind of come and go, only in certain sequences where it really impresses you with some visual sequence, and the rest of it's kind of normal or slight or above average a little bit. The Harley escape sequence is pretty dull until the special effects start coming out of the attacks, and then the choreography kind of changes to accommodate that visual design. So yeah. Let's see. I was misled by the King Shark praise. This especially stings, as I have frequently pronounced my love of himbo characters and himbo energy. But King Shark is kind of just like, you know, I've seen a dozen characters pretty much exactly like him before. Big, dumb, you know, himbo monster that's endearing, lonely, cute, whatever, and just says or does straightforward dumb stuff for jokes. His stupidity is less of, like, a character trait that complements an entire character, and it's more of just, like, a repeating punchline, whereas his actual character is just, like, these small moments where he's being kind of wholesome, cute, in a very predictable kind of way, you know, something you've also seen a lot of. King Shark is also a bit disappointing because of what I talked about with the lack of feeling like a lot even really happened in the movie. Let's see, we only get maybe one or two memorable interactions between King Shark and the other characters, and he's basically irrelevant to the plot. He doesn't do a single thing in the whole plot that was actually necessary. Actually, on that same point, there's this simple little, like, ongoing dilemma, for example, with Bloodsport, where he needs to become a leader. He has the qualities to become a leader. But a couple ironic things. One, Waller recruited him because she believes that he can become a leader, but him becoming a leader has nothing to do with the objective that she wanted them to accomplish. They do that incredibly easily without him needing to become a leader. His whatever leadership is only really relevant becomes a part of the narrative after they already go off and Waller's knocked out. But anyways, the only thing he does once he just suddenly becomes a leader at the end is he gives some people some orders for maybe less than a minute. But half of what he told them to do, or all of what he told them to do, seems pointless and like it didn't matter to the plot. For example, he tells King Shark to attack Starro, but as far as we can tell, it was totally pointless and did nothing at all. Polka Dot Man attacks Starro, but Starro just regenerates the damage that he did, so that also feels like it was completely pointless. Bloodsport does save Ratcatcher 2, but it's unclear why she was standing still, not trying to dodge or anything, and it's, okay, so she's the one who takes down Starro, but Bloodsport didn't even give her an order to do anything. She's acting independently. So basically almost nothing of his leadership mattered at all in that entire sequence, in the whole movie. Harley stabs a CGI monster in the eye, but I also kind of doubt that that was necessary, since I'm sure the rats could have chewed the way in themselves. So yeah, Starro is defeated by this huge swarm of rats, but for example, as far as we know, based on Ratcatcher 2's powers and her magic staff or whatever it does, she could have done this at any time. Like, there's no limitation as far as we know. She could have had the rat army, this massive rat army, ready to go before they even attacked the building, for example. She could have had the rat army ready to go literally the entire journey while they were on the island. That's her one power. So it doesn't make sense that she wouldn't use it all the time to its most effective capacity. Except that it just makes it more convenient for the dramatic beats of the narrative to make this one final dramatic moment, even though obviously she could have done so way sooner, you know? These are the kinds of things that would get solved with a longer plot, with more events happening, since more characters would actually get to contribute to solving problems that mattered in ways that would feel more natural. These are the things that just feel weird when you watch them and think back and realize they don't make much sense. It also, like this rat thing especially, removes any sense of tension in these scenes, because it feels like what the characters can do is just held back for these dramatic moments. It doesn't ever feel like the characters are really being pushed to their limits, and this is because all of the events as a whole feel pretty underdeveloped. But at the end of the day, it's a good movie. I recommend it. Go see it if you haven't. Fucking idiots. Although you probably have already seen it, since my reviews are all spoilery and will always be. So, good on you for watching the movie.